touchdown. It's through 50. He's got the speed. Touchdown.
Welcome into another episode of Mac and Mo's. Andy McNamara, joined by the editor-in-chief of GoDucks.com, Rob Mosley, here to talk about Oregon's game at Michigan State. Wrap that one up. The Ducks ended up on the losing end of this one by a final score of 31-28. Michigan State, number 5 team, tough environment on the road, and the way that this one went, Rob, it certainly started out strong for the Oregon offense, not so strong for the defense, and then that script kind of flipped over by the time this one was over.
Yeah, it was a weird game. The way they drove down to that first touchdown, the offense looked like you thought it should look, and then suddenly interceptions, getting stuffed at the goal line. And Michigan State, really in the third quarter, Michigan State's up 10, looking like they're going to kind of pull away with it. They answered Braylon Adams' punt return quickly. Ducks go 3 and out. They tack on a field goal. It's a double-digit lead, and I was concerned it was going to really start to get away from the Ducks. And then they rally in the fourth quarter and really, I think, save some face. I think nationally this game's not going to hurt them, in a loss. You see they're still the best one-loss team in the polls. I think nationally, people are just going to see this is a great game between two really good teams, which it ended up being.
Yeah, as the season unfolds, it's very unpredictable, but there may be a point where you look back and you say, okay, number 7 played number 5. It was a 3-point game. Losing on the road by 3 points to a top 5 team. I said it on Twitter. I got slammed by a few people, and I said there's no shame in this, especially this early in the year. When you think back to last year, the Ducks lost a conference game at home against Arizona when they were massive favorites in the game, and to me that game had the potential to do a lot more damage than this particular loss.
Yeah, there's still so much season left though. For this loss to have the same repercussions as that one, Ducks are going to win a lot more games in the wake of it than they did last year. So it does change the landscape for sure. It's just going to be weeks and weeks and weeks before we know just how much.
Well, I mentioned at the outset, Oregon's offense looked good early. Royce Freeman was able to run the ball. Didn't break off a lot of long runs, but was able to gash and get enough yardage to create those second and sort of mid-range situations. Vernon Adams, despite clearly an incident with his hand, had to wear a glove in this one, wore 2 gloves because wearing just one felt weird. Wore 2 gloves. That had to be, for a quarterback, I have to think that takes some time to get used to. He only had a couple days to really be able to adjust to that, but was able to make the intermediate throws. He clearly had some issues though on the deeper balls. Both interceptions were underthrown. They weren't necessarily poor decisions, other than just the ball didn't get there.
And then, we've talked about this since, the ball to Byron Marshall late in the game that goes over his head, you wonder if he's overcompensating.
Exactly.
And thinking, hey, I underthrew a couple balls. I better make sure I get enough on this one because he's wide open. And obviously that's the play I think everybody's going to remember from this game, just Byron getting some separation, but the ball being overthrown, in that case. And as good as Vernon looked too on the first drive, it was tough. But that defensive line for Michigan State was so good. I mean, they were so big. You saw on the goal line stand when they stacked up Royce Freeman. I think they gave Matt Haggerty a lot of trouble in this game. Oregon's new center. The whole front 7. But they were fast too. I mean, the times the Ducks tried to attack the edges, when Vernon Adams had tried to escape the pocket, he's an athletic guy. And he'd have DNs pursuing him and closing off, taking good angles and closing off the outside as well. So it wasn't like they were just big and slow. They were big and athletic and just gave Oregon a lot of trouble over the course of the night, with the sacks and largely containing the running game to an extent we're not used to seeing against the Ducks.
Yeah, very certainly a well-documented defense coming into this one, Michigan State, and they lived up to their end of the bargain. Royce Freeman, a workmanlike performance. He was able to get some yards. The average yards per carry wasn't awful. It was disappointing, I think, though, when you have a back like that, like Royce. You have what is at this point in the season one of your healthier lines that you're going to have, that they weren't able to get 1 yard when they needed to. And I think that that's been something that has been a problem on a couple different occasions in recent seasons, and something that I think I'm sure that the coaching staff is aware that this is something that needs to be fixed if possible, because you've got this great back, you got this powerful guy, and there are instances in big games where you need to get a yard, and they weren't able to do so.
Well, and the other thing, if we're wondering, how things might have been different, the other thing to wonder about is a field goal in that situation. Because when you lose by 3 and you pass up the chance to kick a field goal and get stuffed at the goal line, that resonates. And, if it's a tie game, if it's 31-31 on that last Oregon possession, maybe they're not worried about taking shots at the end zone. Maybe they're just trying to get a 3 and a game-winning field goal and just be conservative and get in position there. So, it was interesting how different this game felt at different times, as we alluded to early in the game, because there was times when it felt like the Ducks were going to get blown out, and then you look back and you think, man, how easily too that they could have won this game too. So just a ton of lessons for the whole team to take as they go forward.
Yeah. On a positive note, one thing that I was impressed by was Michigan State went on a couple drives in the third quarter. Oregon was able to get the punt return by Addison to tie the game at 14, but the Spartans went on a couple of just mammoth drives where they just chewed up clock. They kept Oregon's defense on the field forever, and we saw it. We've seen it in the past. Last year in the national championship game, the Ducks got close to Ohio State, and then they went on one of those drives that just sapped the life out of the UO defense, and they weren't able to recover. In this game, the defense was able to recover, and I think that was a great sign in this particular game, because Oregon got 3 big 3-and-outs after that long drive, and gave the offense a chance, and really gave the team a chance to win this game when it was all said and done. I know that coaches, around the country these days don't really care as much maybe about time of possession as they once did, but there are points in certain games where if you go on that 6-minute and 30-second touchdown drive, you're taking up almost half the quarter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth more than 7 points a lot of times.
You do have to take that into account too, that Michigan State was probably hoping to do that on those last 2 possessions, and that probably affected their play calling. They were probably being conservative. But at least one instance, I think Christian French and somebody else are involved in a tackle for loss on first down. Well, now you got to throw the ball. I mean, because there's just enough time left. Ducks were in a position where they wanted to save timeouts. You get a tackle for loss on first down, you make them throw twice incomplete on second and third down. You haven't used any of your timeouts, and you've saved them offensively, but you've also preserved clock. So it couldn't have gone any better in that situation for the Oregon defense. So, and those guys post-game were very encouraged. I mean, certainly there's moments, if you went back play by play, you'd look at some plays where their defense didn't have any reason to feel very encouraged. Yeah. There were still a few more missed tackles.
Like the first play of the game.
Yeah, exactly. There were some missed assignments that probably opened up some gaps that in some situations, but some missed tackles as well. Some angles by defensive backs where they might have been able to get in on plays that they otherwise did not. But the way they finished, they felt pretty good about, and they felt like things started to click a little bit. So, now the goal is to obviously carry that into this week of practice, carry that into the Georgia State game, but then even more importantly, carry that forward into Pac-12 play and really try to clean up some of the things that have been issues through the first 8 quarters.
Yeah, the Spartans with a 62-yard run on their first offensive series of the game. And you take away that particular play, you can't because it's a big play in the game, but the average yards per carry that the defense allowed from that point forward was really encouraging, and something that I think against a veteran unit on offense and what is right now projected to be a first or second round draft pick in a quarterback in Connor Cook, hopefully it's something as disappointing as a loss can be. Oftentimes it can make a team better, and I think this is a perfect scenario where that's at least in play.
Yeah, but it all comes down to how they apply that in practice, how they apply that going forward. This is going to be a tricky week for that. Going into a game where you're really heavily favored, because that late game pressure situation against Michigan State kind of brought out the best in the Oregon defense. Apparently, the odds are that pressure is not going to exist again for a couple of weeks. So it is going to be a challenge to try to maintain that momentum, I think.
You almost have to pretend like you're in different situations.
It'll be on the coaches to create some practice situations. We were traveling back today, Monday, from the the Titans game, seeing Marcus Mariota's debut, so we didn't get a chance to watch him practice today. But we'll see over the next few days if they do that, create some situations, which they do anyway, some clutch situations, but just to try to kind of keep the pressure on.
Some more positives out of this one for the Ducks. Charles Nelson returned, saw his first action of the season, matched his career high with 7 catches. He was Vernon Adams Jr.'s favorite target early in this one, and just you see kind of what you missed last week in Charles, and a player that just continues to get better and better. One of the more exciting overall football players, I think, on this team, and it was real encouraging to see him be able to cut it loose. Devin Allen didn't make a catch in this one, but played significant snaps, and this is a guy coming off off-season surgery, his first time on the football field in game play since that opening kickoff in the Rose Bowl against Florida State, where he was injured, and his recovery has gone great. Obviously, he's made it back on the field. Braylon Addison, who missed all of last year due to injury, sort of had a quiet opening against Eastern Washington, caught a couple balls, but in this one, he looked like his 2013 self out there, not only returning punts but big plays in the receiving game as well.
Late in the game, it's like go to Braylon, find Braylon, hit Braylon, because he was moving the chains when the Ducks needed to come from behind and get some points. Dwayne Stanford suffers. He becomes the guy who slipped statistically with Charles Nelson coming back, but there's only so many footballs to spread around. I was really encouraged by the timing between Nelson and Adams. With Charles not playing last week, just the reps haven't been there as much between Vernon and Charles as with some other receivers, but they looked like they had some pretty good timing early on, and that'll develop with Devin, which is going to be very encouraging because Devin was open a couple times. I mean, that speed is still there for him, and there were some times he got open deep, and it was just a matter of did Vernon have enough time to see him and find him and try to get a ball to him. So that's going to be the case later in the season. So that'll be really fun to watch.
We sort of knew Devin was real close to coming back during, I think it was one of the Thursday practices, actually probably 2 weeks ago, where he was doing some runs along the sideline. And, I just caught him out of the corner of my eye, and it was like a thundering train coming down, and he was just absolutely flying. Yeah. Now, that's in a straight line, but you could tell he was getting real close at that point. And when he shows off that track speed, I mean, there's just not a whole lot that a defense can do, and then it's just on the Ducks to get him the ball and on him to catch it and finish the play.
And Devin, we've talked about this. Charles is another guy, Devin's another guy. These are guys who attack to their recovery process.
Yes,
not
absolutely.
Everybody does. Some guys, hey, maybe you miss some treatment appointment now and then. You're not quite as vigorous as you need to be in taking on that responsibility, but you have to be as dedicated to that as you do to practice and studying plays and things like that. And with guys like Charles and Devin, they're going to be guys that we're going to do that. So genetics are key and all that. There's a million factors, but there's a reason too that those guys returned as quickly as they did.
So once again, the final score, Michigan State, the number 5 ranked team at the time. They've climbed a little bit in the polls, 31, Oregon 28. The Ducks have slid out of the top 10 for now. Still lots of season left, and it's really on them. If they've got a lot of games in front of them, but some winnable games coming up certainly. And then as the schedule gets deeper, there's going to be some real tough challenges, including just 2 weeks from now when Utah visits Autzen Stadium. Utah currently is a top 25 opponent, and that could be quite a matchup as well. Check GoDucks.com for the kickoff time for that game. Typically, we would have it by now. It is Monday afternoon. We normally would have had the time in hand this morning, but because there's a potential for a 6-day window for a couple of the Pac-12 games where the networks, they're allowed to cash in that chip 1 or 2 times a season to get a smaller window if they anticipate that there could be a bigger matchup, maybe 11 days from now than today, they'll do that. So just pay attention to the website for the kickoff time for that game. Before we let you go and before we go and shower and just get ourselves together, we've been traveling across country today, and it's exactly. It's 5 o'clock for us actually. So. But
quitting time.
We would be remiss if we didn't at least talk a little bit about our experience yesterday. Got to see Marcus Mariota's rookie debut in the NFL as his Titans traveled to Tampa Bay. The staff at Tampa Bay was amazing to us to give us the access that they did. And I mean, I felt like, you know, Wayne and Garth at times out on the field with our passes. Like, is this real? You know, we can just kind of roam around, and got to talk to Marcus. He had an amazing game.
Yeah.
I think we've all seen him as a player. I think deep down, everybody, you know, feels like he's going to be a good pro, but some of that might stem from just because you like him so much and you want him to succeed so much. So it was really gratifying to see him kind of, you know, do what Marcus does. Yeah. And yeah, it's a different level. It's a much higher stakes game than he came from, but Marcus is Marcus.
Yeah. Yeah, the level of pride expressed, I think, by Oregon fans everywhere that we saw on social media was just cool. I mean, the fact that, you know, you always wonder, and I've mentioned this before, you know, when we're kind of shedding light on these guys and trying to present them to the fans, whether the message is really coming across. You know, he did himself, you know, the more favors than we ever could have with that Heisman speech, but in endearing himself to people and kind of showing his true colors. But it's just great to see people rooting for him because he's earned it. And you know, from a football sense, I mean, it was really fun to watch. The way the Titans have incorporated some Oregon stuff to help him out. Some of those quick routes, you know, as we were saying, you know, you can imagine Keenan Lowe catching a couple of those quick slants over the last couple of years. And some of the stuff he was doing out of the shotgun, he was 10 of 10 out of the shotgun. He was perfect. Some of the zone read stuff they showed, run pass option, but he had to throw out of the pocket too. I mean, he ran much more under center than he did shotgun, probably because of how the game went too, and they were handing off a lot to milk some clock late, but he had to make a lot of pocket throws. Ken Wisenhunt, our head coach, said that his very first completion, you know, a third down throw to move the chains out of the pocket, set up their first touchdown was you know, maybe Wisenhunt's favorite play of the game. So, you know, he's showing an ability to adapt to the next level as well, while also having his team show the ability to play to his strengths. So, just really cool to see all the way around.
He had a 158.3 passer rating. The NFL does a different. They use a different formula than college football. So that would be, you know, that would be a good day in college, but that's a perfect day in the NFL. You cannot get a passer rating higher than 158.3 with the way that they measure it. So he was that efficient. He became the first rookie quarterback since Fran Tarkenton to throw 4 touchdowns in his debut in the NFL.
And he did it by halftime.
Yeah, and he did it by halftime. Yeah, it was awesome to see. As you alluded to with the fans, you know, on social, in the stadium also, there were fans decked out, some wearing Oregon gear, you know, groups, you know, somebody will have a Marcus jersey, a Titans jersey, someone else will have, you know, the number 8 from Oregon. People dressed up like the Mario Brothers. It was really.
And that was in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that was in Tampa Bay. A lot of people made the trip and traveled to see him, and he was so appreciative of all the support that he got down there. And, you know, he's the same guy that he was here, and it was real refreshing to see that he hasn't changed a bit on or off the field.
Best part of the whole day, I thought, was hearing him talk about how he was trying to keep track of that Michigan State game. He said he was trying to keep track of Michigan State, Oregon, and they were doing bed checks because they were up against their curfew, so he's kind of trying to keep one eye open to keep track of the score while he's supposed to be in bed getting rest for the next game. So he's still a Duck. He said watching we had a brief moment where we just got to kind of shoot the breeze with him, and he said watching the Eastern Washington game was really emotional for him, just to not be out there and, you know, to see his guys kind of moving on.
Especially at home, he said as well, the fact that it was at Autzen.
But you know, this game, you know, he was just wrapped watching that Michigan State game too, and, you know, a tough loss, but he thought they played okay, and they'll get better from it too. So it's just, you know, he's kind of turned into a fan, which is cool to see too.
And make sure, you know, he's got to make sure to follow the rules, though.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
I know it's Pac-12 after dark for fans, but, you know, when guys have games to get ready for,
I think
the
he
next
showed
day.
Sunday that he had gotten his adequate rest.
Yeah. So great trip. The only thing that would have made it better would have been an Oregon win in East Lansing. It wasn't to be this time, but the Ducks would be right back at it. Georgia State, 11 a.m. kickoff at Autzen Stadium this coming Saturday. Rob and I will be back later in the week to preview that one. Till next time, if you have a question for us on Mac and Mose, you can get to us on Twitter. I'm at McNamara UO. He is at Duck Football. Until next time, we'll see you.
Gets the corner into the end zone for the touchdown. It's through 50. He's got the speed. Touchdown.